A broken waitress accidentally catches the attention of the vampire king, and a deal made out of desperation becomes the most dangerous turning point of her life. A relationship born from an accident and a contract slowly transforms into loyalty, pain, and love until it reaches an eternal bond. But the price of this immortal love forces both of them to fight their own worlds, their deepest secrets, and their darkest fears. The accident. Some stories don't start with fate. They start with a bad shift, a cold night, and a person who has already learned not to expect miracles. That was me counting tips that never reached enough, smiling for customers who didn't see me, and telling my heart to stay quiet. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and sweet syrup, the kind that sticks to your clothes long after you clock out. Outside, the city rain tapped the windows like impatient fingers. I kept wiping the same table because my hands needed something to do. If my hands stopped, my thoughts would get louder. My name is Maya. I was 22 and I carried my life in a backpack. One spare sweater, a half-charged phone, and a notebook full of dreams I didn't show anyone anymore. That night, the doorbell chimed and someone stepped in who didn't belong in a place like this. At first, I noticed the quiet. People didn't stop talking, but their voices softened like the air had turned heavy. Then I noticed the stranger tall, dressed too neatly for the rain, his coat dark as midnight and somehow still dry at the shoulders. His hair was black and smooth, and his eyes looked like someone had taken a piece of the night sky and taught it how to stare back. He took a seat in the corner booth where the light flickered. I grabbed a menu and walked over, practicing my friendly waitress voice in my head. Hi, welcome in, coffee, tea. He didn't open the menu. He looked at me as if he'd already read every page. Water, he said softly. The voice wasn't cold exactly. It was controlled, like a person holding something dangerous behind their teeth. I nodded, but my hands fumbled. I dropped the menu, then crouched to pick it up, my cheeks burning. Sorry, long night. His gaze shifted away, as if he was giving me privacy on purpose. That small kindness was so unexpected it felt like a shock. When I returned with water, I tried to recover with humor. Congratulations, I told him, placing the glass down. You're officially the least complicated customer I've had all week. To my surprise, the corner of his mouth lifted. Not a full smile, just enough to prove he remembered how. I should have left it there, but my brain was tired and my heart was curious. You're not from around here, are you? He didn't answer right away. The diner lights hummed. Rain slid down the window behind him like silver threads. I'm passing through, he said. Something about the way he said it made me think he'd been passing through for a very long time. The night crawled on. A couple argued quietly over pancakes. A teenager laughed too loud at his own joke and nearly choked on a fry. I found myself glancing at the corner booth more often than I meant to. Then a group of men walked in, loud, dripping rain, heavy boots. The kind of guys who threw their presence around like they owned the air. They took a booth near mine, and within minutes they started treating the diner like their personal stage. Hey waitress, one called, smile, it won't kill you. I forced a tight smile and kept moving. I'd learned survival tricks: don't react, don't argue, don't give them your real feelings. But when I passed their table, one of them stuck his foot out just a little. I didn't see it until it was too late. My tray tipped. Water, coffee, and a full glass of iced tea went flying, slow motion, like the universe wanted me to watch my own humiliation. I braced for the crash. Oh, the tray never hit the ground. A hand caught it. Not mine. The stranger's hand, steady as stone, had reached out from across the aisle with impossible speed. He held the tray upright while liquid sloshed but didn't spill. The whole diner seemed to freeze for one breath. He didn't glare at the men, he didn't threaten, he didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at them. And somehow that was worse for them. The loudest one cleared his throat and sat back, suddenly interested in his napkin. The others shifted as if the air had turned colder around their seats. I stared at the stranger, heart pounding. How did you? He set the tray back into my hands like it weighed nothing. His fingers didn't linger, but when they brushed mine, I felt a strange warmth run through my skin, like sunlight remembered. Careful, he murmured. The word didn't sound like a warning, it sounded like concern. I should have thanked him and walked away. That would have been normal. That would have been safe, but something inside me, the part that was tired of being invisible, made a different choice. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Okay, who are you? His eyes flickered, not with fear, but with the kind of sadness people hide when they've stopped hoping anyone will notice. Before he could answer, the diner's front door opened again. A woman stepped inside, elegant and severe, dressed in a dark coat with a silver clasp shaped like a thorn. She didn't look around. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight to the corner booth like she belonged to him. And the stranger, this calm, controlled man, went very still. The woman spoke in a voice as smooth as velvet and as sharp as glass. "My king," she said, not loudly, yet everyone seemed to hear it anyway. "You weren't supposed to come here." My stomach dropped. Okay. The stranger's gaze met mine, and for the first time I saw something raw behind his calm urgency, and a silent plea I couldn't understand. Then he stood up, and the lights above his booth flickered harder, as if the electricity itself was nervous. He turned slightly toward me and said, so quietly it felt like it was meant only for my ears, "If they ask you to come with me, don't say no." I didn't even get to respond. The elegant woman's eyes slid toward me, and her expression changed, like she had just found something valuable by accident. She smiled, not kindly. "Ah," she said, "so this is the girl." My throat went dry. "I don't know what you means." The stranger, the vampire king, apparently didn't look at her. He looked at me, and in his eyes was a truth that hit harder than any insult, any bad tip day, any lonely night. Well, he hadn't chosen to step into my diner. But now, somehow, he was choosing me. And I had no idea whether that choice would save me or ruin us both. Part 1 ends here, because the woman took one step closer, and the king's hand curled into a fist like he was about to break his own rules to protect a waitress he barely knew. The deal that wasn't a choice. The elegant woman didn't rush. She moved like time itself worked for her, like the diner floor was a chessboard and everyone on it was already placed. Up close, her perfume smelled faintly of winter roses, pretty, but too sharp to breathe in for long. "Don't be afraid," she told me, as if fear was something she could turn off with a polite sentence. "His Majesty is selective, you should feel honored." I tried to speak, but my tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. My hands tightened around the tray. The customers stared, frozen in that awkward human way where nobody wants to get involved, but everybody wants the story. The king, because I couldn't call him the stranger anymore, stepped between us without raising his voice. He didn't touch the woman, he didn't threaten her. He just changed the space, the way a door closing changes the whole room. "Lenora," he said, the name like a warning wrapped in silk. "Not here." Lenora's smile sharpened. "Where then? Your council has been searching for you. The treaties are cracking, the borders are restless. You vanish into a human diner and expect me to pretend it means nothing." He stared at her for a long moment. "It means nothing to you," he said. "That's why you don't understand." Those words hit me strangely, because I knew what it felt like when someone decided your life meant nothing before even learning your name. I found my voice in the worst possible way through humor because my nerves needed somewhere to go. "Okay," I said, half laughing, half dying inside. "So I'm just going to say what everyone is thinking. Are you royalty like fancy royalty or like Halloween royalty?" Lenora blinked, offended. The king's mouth twitched again. A near smile, quick and private, like he didn't want anyone to see he still had that part of him. But his eyes stayed serious when they returned to mine. "Maya," he said softly, he remembered my name. "You should go to the back, now." "What? Why?" Lenora answered for him, because you're involved. My chest tightened. I didn't sign up for anything. Lenora tilted her head. No, you were chosen. The king's jaw flexed, controlled anger sitting under his calm like a storm under glass. Enough, he said. Lenora's gaze flicked to him. You can't protect her with silence. Humans don't survive our world by accident. My heartbeat thundered. Your world, I whispered. The king didn't deny it. He simply looked exhausted for the first time, like his calm was something he had to carry every second. Then the diner door opened again with a cold gust of rain, and two men stepped inside wearing dark coats that looked expensive in a way that didn't belong to this neighborhood. They scanned the room without pretending to be customers. The air changed. Even the fry-laughing teenager stopped chewing. Lenora straightened, pleased. Ah, you see, even here they find you. The king's eyes narrowed, not fear, calculation, a leader's mind clicking into place. One of the new men approached, stopping a careful distance away. Your Majesty, he said respectfully, but his respect felt rehearsed. The council requests your return tonight. Lenora crossed her arms. Requests, she repeated like she was enjoying the word. The king's voice stayed low. Tell the council I will return when I decide. The man's gaze slid past him to me, and the human. My stomach dropped. I took a step back, bumping the edge of a table. Someone's fork clinked onto a plate. My whole body wanted to run, but my legs didn't obey. The king moved again, subtly putting himself between me and their attention. She is not a topic for discussion. The second man smiled, thin and unpleasant. Everything connected to the king is a topic. Lenora's eyes gleamed. Bring her, she suggested casually. A living symbol, a leash with a heartbeat. The word leash landed like a slap. The king's control finally cracked just for a second. Not into violence, not into cruelty, but into something more frightening. Pure, quiet fury aimed at anyone who treated a human life like a tool. Oh, never, he said. And then, so softly that it felt like a confession, he added, I didn't mean for her to be noticed. That broke something in me because it sounded like guilt, like he was sorry my life had collided with his. The council man took a step closer. Your Majesty, if she remains here, she becomes a vulnerability. If she comes with you, she becomes useful. I couldn't believe this was happening. 10 minutes ago, my biggest problem was an unpaid electric bill and a manager who cut my hours. Now strangers were discussing my fate like I was a suitcase. I swallowed hard. I'm standing right here, I said, forcing strength into my voice. And I am not useful, I'm a person. To my surprise, the king turned his head slightly, like he was listening to something precious. Lenora laughed once, a sound with no warmth. You see, Majesty, she has spirit. Humans always do, right before reality teaches them humility. I flinched at the word. Humility wasn't what she meant. She meant obedience. The king's gaze stayed on me, not possessive, not hungry, something else, like he was trying to decide the least painful path in a room full of knives. Then he did the last thing I expected. He lowered his head slightly, an unmistakable gesture of respect, and spoke to me as if my consent mattered in a world where it clearly didn't. Maya, he said, I can leave you here, and they will come back without me because now they have seen you, or you can come with me tonight under my protection. My protection, I echoed, I don't even know your name. For the first time, his voice carried a hint of vulnerability. Adrian. It didn't sound like a king's name. It sounded like a person's name, like someone who once had friends and favorite songs and a life before the crown. Adrian, I repeated, testing it like a key. Lenora's smile faltered just a little, like she didn't like that he'd given me something human. I drew a shaky breath. So what is this, kidnapping with manners? Adrian's eyes softened, and the whole world seemed to quiet around that softness. It's a deal, he said. A dangerous one, but it's the only way I can keep you alive without breaking the peace. My mouth went dry. What do you want from me? His answer came after a pause, and it was nothing like what I expected. Nothing, he said. Not your blood, not your body, not your freedom. I want time to move you somewhere safe, and I want you to stay close enough that they stop seeing you as an easy target. Lenora scoffed, how noble. Adrian didn't look at her. You can call it whatever you like, but she will not be harmed. I stared at him, trying to find the trap. Because in my life, kindness usually came with a price tag hidden behind someone's smile. Still, his eyes didn't feel like hunger. They felt like restraint, like he was fighting his own nature to make sure my fear didn't grow. Outside, thunder rolled. The neon diner sign buzzed overhead. My manager stood near the register pretending not to see anything, because in the real world, people survive by looking away. I thought of my backpack, my notebook, my tiny, tired dreams. And I thought of how those men looked at me, like I wasn't safe anymore even if Adrian walked out and never returned. I lifted my chin. It felt like lifting a weight. Okay, I said, voice shaking but steady enough. I'll come, but I'm not your symbol, I'm not your leash. And if you lie to me, Adrian, I will scream in every language I know. Something almost like relief flashed through his face. Then he nodded once, solemn. I would expect nothing less, he said. Lenora clapped slowly, mocking. Wonderful, the human has terms. Adrian extended his hand, not grabbing, not forcing, offering. I hesitated, then placed my hand in his. His skin was cool but not dead cold, more like marble warmed by a sun that wasn't allowed to touch it directly. His grip was careful, like he was afraid to crush something fragile without meaning to. Stay close, he murmured. As we walked toward the exit, one of the council men leaned in and whispered to Lenora, not quite quietly enough. If she matters to him, he said, she can be used against him. Lenora's eyes glittered. Exactly. My heart stuttered. Adrian's hand tightened just slightly, protective, not possessive. We stepped outside into the rain. A sleek black car waited at the curb. The driver opened the door without a word. Everything about it screamed planned. I turned to Adrian, voice small despite my effort. If this is a mistake. His gaze held mine, and it was a promise that looked painfully sincere. I will not let them take your life from you, he said, not because you're useful, because it would be wrong. I felt something shift inside me, something I'd buried under years of disappointment. A dangerous thing. A hope. Then the driver spoke for the first time, eyes fixed ahead. Majesty, we are being followed. Adrian's posture changed instantly, calm turning into command. He guided me into the car, his body shielding me from the street like instinct. As the door shut, I saw Lenora still standing under the diner's awning, smiling into the rain. She lifted 2 fingers to her throat, then pointed at me like a silent promise. You're mine to play with. The car lurched forward, tires hissing on wet pavement. I pressed my palm to the window, watching the diner vanish behind us like the last normal thing I'd ever have. Adrian leaned close, voice low in the dark interior. Maya, he said urgently, I need you to listen to me. Whatever happens next, do not accept a drink from anyone but me. My blood ran cold. A drink of what? He looked away for half a second, as if choosing the least terrifying truth. Of anything, he said, because in my world, trust can be poisoned without a drop of venom. Headlights flared behind us, too close, too fast. The car swerved. My shoulder slammed gently into Adrian's arm, and he caught me without thinking, steadying me like I mattered. Outside, the city blurred into streaks of rain and light. Inside, Adrian whispered something that made my stomach drop even harder than the chase. They've already decided, he said. They're going to force the bond. I stared at him, breath shallow. What bond? His eyes met mine, ancient, careful, and full of hidden compassion. "The kind that makes you mine," he said, voice breaking just a little, "even if I never wanted to take anything from you." And behind us, the pursuing car's headlights surged closer, swallowing the road like a threat with teeth. Part 2 ends here, because the deal had just changed into something neither of us could undo, and I still didn't know whether Adrian was saving me or accidentally claiming me forever, the choice that became forever. The car cut through the rain like it was trying to outrun the truth. The city lights smeared across the windows, and every time the tires hissed over a puddle, my stomach lifted like we might slide into something we couldn't recover from. Adrian sat beside me, shoulders squared, face calm, but his hand rested on the seat between us like a guardrail. Not to trap me, to keep me steady. And somehow that made it worse because it told me he'd been careful for a long time, careful enough to be lonely. The driver took a sharp turn down a narrow street lined with old brick buildings and sleeping storefronts. A second car followed, headlights too bright, too hungry. "They won't stop," I whispered. Adrian didn't look away from the rear window. "No," he said, "because fear is useful to them, and you're a shortcut to control." I swallowed, forcing the words out. "You said they want to force a bond. What does that mean?" His jaw tightened. "In my world, a bond can be made through a ritual, old rules, old magic. It can tie a human life to a vampire's authority." My skin prickled, like slavery. "No," his head snapped toward me, and the sharpness in his voice surprised me because it wasn't anger at me. It was anger at the idea, not if I have anything to say about it. The car swerved again. The driver cursed under his breath, then flicked a switch. A dark panel slid up between the front and back seats, muffling the outside world. We were suddenly sealed into a quiet, expensive darkness that smelled faintly of cedar and rainwater. Adrian turned fully to me. "Maya, listen carefully. There is only one way to keep them from binding you against your will." My chest tightened. "What is it?" He hesitated, like the words tasted like guilt. "You would have to accept protection under my name, publicly." I stared at him. "So you'd claim me?" His eyes held mine, and there it was again, that hidden compassion heavy as a vow. "I would declare you under my care, not as property, as a person I am responsible for. It would make you untouchable to them without starting a war." "And what do I get to be?" My voice cracked. "A headline, a rumor, a symbol." His expression softened. "You get to be alive," he said quietly, "and you get to choose what happens next." I almost laughed because choice had never been something the world handed me. I'd worked jobs where managers forgot my paycheck, lived with people who treated my kindness like it was free labor, and learned to survive by shrinking. But Adrian wasn't asking me to shrink. He was asking me to stand where everyone would see me. The pursuing headlights flared closer, washing the back window in white. The driver's muffled voice came through an intercom. "Majesty, we're 2 minutes from the safe house, but they have allies ahead." Adrian closed his eyes for a beat, like he was praying without believing in mercy. When he opened them, he looked older than he had in the diner. Not physically, something deeper. The kind of tired you get from carrying responsibility longer than one lifetime. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "You owe yourself safety. If you say no, I will find another way, but it may cost lives. And I refuse to let your first lesson in our world be guilt." That right there was the moment I understood why he was dangerous. Not because he was a vampire, but because he was a king who still cared. The car jolted as something struck the rear, hard enough to make me gasp. Adrian's arm shot across me instantly, not touching my chest, not pulling me close, just forming a protective line so my body didn't slam forward. Outside, tires screamed. The driver swerved, then accelerated. My breath came in short bursts. "This is insane." Adrian's voice stayed steady. "I know." And then, because my fear needed an exit, I blurted, "So this is your idea of a first date?" Well, he blinked, confused for a half second. I added because I was promised coffee and awkward small talk, not being chased by your weird coworkers. For a heartbeat, his lips parted like he didn't know what to do with humor. Then a quiet sound escaped him, not a laugh exactly, more like a memory of one. It warmed the dark interior more than the heater ever could. I apologize, he said, deadpan. I appear to have skipped several steps. I snorted, surprised at myself. Yeah, like my name, your name, and the part where you ask if I'm okay with vampire politics. His gaze softened again. Are you okay? The question was so simple, so human that my throat tightened. No, I admitted, but I'm still here. Well, he nodded as if that meant everything. The safe house appeared ahead, a tall, quiet building tucked behind iron gates, its windows dim, its stonework old enough to look like it remembered secrets. The driver punched in a code. The gates opened. But before we crossed, a truck rolled into the street up ahead, blocking the entrance with slow confidence. The pursuing car stopped behind us, sealing us in. We were trapped in a narrow corridor of wet asphalt and shadow. The driver's hands tightened on the wheel. Majesty. Adrian's posture changed. The air around him seemed to settle as if it recognized authority. He turned to me one last time, voice low. Maya, if you run, I won't blame you. But if you stay, you must let me speak for you until you can speak safely for yourself. My heart hammered, and what do you lose? He looked out the window at the figures stepping from the truck, several silhouettes, all disciplined, all too calm. I lose the right to pretend I'm alone, he said. That sentence hit harder than any threat outside, because it told me what he'd been surviving, not enemies, but isolation. The back door opened from outside. Rain rushed in. A man stood there, one of the councils. He wore a polite expression like a mask. Your Majesty, he said, bowing slightly, we're here to escort you and the girl. Adrian stepped out first, shielding me with his body. The rain didn't seem to bother him. It beaded on his coat like the night itself refused to cling. I followed, my shoes splashing in shallow puddles, my waitress uniform suddenly ridiculous in this scene of power and shadows. The council men formed a loose semicircle. Lenora stepped forward from behind the truck, immaculate despite the weather, as if the rain had been trained to avoid her. Maya, she purred, tasting my name. You look overwhelmed, don't worry, this will all be settled quickly. Adrian's voice cut through the night. Step back. Lenora lifted her brows. Or what, you'll start a war for a waitress. Adrian didn't raise his voice, he didn't threaten, he simply answered with truth. I would start a war to protect an innocent, he said. That is what a king is for. The council man sighed like Adrian was being inconvenient. Majesty, with respect, your compassion makes you predictable. Adrian glanced at me. Maya, he said softly, do you trust me? My stomach twisted. Trust was a bridge I'd watched collapse too many times, but then I remembered the tray in the diner, the way he'd caught it without showing off, the way he'd looked away to protect my dignity. I remembered how he'd asked if I was okay, like it mattered. I don't know you, I said honestly, but I believe you're trying. Adrian's eyes flickered with something like pain and gratitude. Lenora's smile widened. How inspiring, now let's do it properly, the bond. A silver cup appeared in Lenora's hand, offered like a gift. The liquid inside looked dark, almost black in the rain. Her eyes glittered. Drink, she told me, and the king's troubles end. You'll be honored, protected, remembered. My hands shook. Adrian's voice sharpened. Maya, don't. Lenora tilted her head. Isn't it her choice, Majesty, or do you only support consent when it's convenient? That twist was cruelly clever. It tried to make Adrian the villain, no matter what he did. My mind raced. If I refused, they could force it later. If I accepted, I'd be tied to a system that treated me like a tool. Then I heard Adrian's earlier warning in my head, do not accept a drink from anyone but me. I looked at Lenora's cup again. It wasn't a welcome. It was a chain dressed up as a toast. I lifted my chin. You want me to drink so you can control him, I said, voice shaking but loud enough to carry. Lenora's smile froze for a half second. I turned to Adrian. If there's going to be any bond, I said, it will happen on my terms, not hers. The council man's eyes narrowed. A human can't set terms. Adrian spoke before I could. She can in my presence. He stepped forward and with a steady hand removed a small vial from inside his coat. It was clear glass, old-fashioned, sealed with a wax mark like a stamp. The council men stiffened. Even Lenora's confidence faltered. Oh, that is forbidden, Lenora hissed. Adrian's gaze didn't leave mine. This is not the council's bond, he said. This is my vow. My breath caught. What's in it? A pledge, he said. Old law, if you accept it, you become under my protection in a way the council cannot twist. But it also binds me. I lose certain freedoms. I become answerable for your safety, your happiness, your choices. A happiness, I repeated, incredulous. Adrian's expression tightened with sincerity. A king who only protects bodies is not protecting enough. Lenora's voice rose sharp. You would weaken your rule for a human. Adrian finally looked at her, and his eyes were colder, not cruel, just unmovable. My rule was already weak, he said, if it required fear to hold it together. The rain fell harder, like applause made of water. My heart pounded so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. This was bigger than me. And yet, for the first time in my life, someone powerful was offering me power too, the power to be treated like a person. Still, I needed one thing. I met Adrian's eyes. Promise me, I said. If I take your vow, you won't turn me into something I don't want to be. I don't want to wake up one day and realize my life is gone. Adrian's voice softened. I promise you will remain yourself always, and if you ever choose to leave, I will let you go. Lenora laughed harsh. Lies, no immortal lets go of what they claim. Adrian didn't argue. He simply held out the vial to me, his hand steady, his posture humble, like he understood that love without choice is just another kind of cage. I reached for it. My fingers trembled around the glass. The wax seal cracked softly under my thumb. And then I paused, because accepting it meant my old life would end. The diner, the small apartment I couldn't afford anyway, the lonely freedom of having no one to lose. I looked at Lenora's silver cup, control disguised as comfort. Then I looked at Adrian, power restrained by conscience. A deep message rose in my chest, clear as breath. A broken life doesn't become whole by being owned. It becomes whole by being seen, respected, and chosen by others and by yourself. I lifted the vial. I accept your vow, I said, voice trembling, on one condition. The council man scoffed. Ridiculous. Adrian's eyes searched mine. Name it. I swallowed. You will not rule through fear, I said. Not because I'm special, because it's wrong. If I'm under your protection, then let me be proof that kindness is not weakness. The rain ran down Adrian's face like he was crying without allowing himself the luxury. He nodded once, slowly, like a man making a promise to more than one person. Oh, then let it begin, he said. I drank. The liquid was not bitter. It tasted like warmth and winter at the same time, like a memory of home I didn't know I had. My chest tightened, and for a second I couldn't breathe. Adrian caught me, gentle, careful, his hands steady at my shoulders. His eyes widened, not with hunger, but with fear for me. Amaya, he whispered, stay with me. I forced air into my lungs. The world sharpened, the rain louder, the streetlights brighter. I felt present, stronger, not supernatural, not monstrous, just awake in a way I hadn't been in years. A faint mark appeared on my wrist, delicate as a bracelet made of moonlight. The council men recoiled. Lenora's face twisted. No, she breathed, that mark. The king's vow, the council man murmured, shaken. It cannot be overridden. Adrian straightened, his voice carrying authority that didn't need intimidation. Maya is protected under my law, he declared. Any harm to her is treason against the crown. The silence fell like a curtain. Lenora recovered quickly because people like her always do. You've made her a target, she said smoothly. Now everyone knows where your heart is. Adrian's gaze didn't flinch. Then let them know, he replied. I have been unloved by my own court for centuries. I will not be ruled by their approval. Lenora leaned in, voice low, meant to poison. She will age, she will weaken, she will break. Humans always do, and you will either watch her die or you will turn her. My stomach turned. The word turn hung in the air like a door to a dark hallway. Adrian's eyes met mine, and the compassion there was so clear it hurt. No one will force that choice on you, he said to me, not to Lenora. Not them, not me, not fate. For the first time, I realized something terrifying and beautiful. He wasn't promising me forever. He was promising me dignity. The gates behind us creaked open. The safe house awaited, quiet, warm lights flickering inside like an invitation. The council men backed away, not defeated but blocked. Their plan had failed tonight. Lenora's eyes burned with a promise of future trouble, but she smiled as if she'd already written the next chapter. This isn't over, she whispered. Adrian's voice stayed calm. No, he agreed, now it begins. He turned to me and offered his hand again, always offering, never taking. I took it. Inside the safe house, the warmth wrapped around us. Someone had lit a fire. It smelled like wood smoke and old books. The driver finally relaxed, exhaling like he'd been holding his breath for miles. Adrian led me to a quiet room and stepped back, giving me space. You can lock the door, he said. You can sleep, you can ask questions, you can yell at me, you can decide what you want. I stared at him, overwhelmed. Why are you doing this? I whispered. Why me? Adrian's eyes softened with something almost unbearably tender. Because you looked at me in that diner, he said, and you didn't see a monster, you saw a person, and I had forgotten what that felt like. My throat tightened. I'm still scared. He nodded, humility in the way he held himself. So am I. A silence stretched between us, gentle, full of unspoken things. Then he added, voice quiet, the council will come again. Lenora will not stop. They will try to turn your kindness into a weakness. They will try to make you hate me for what I am. I swallowed, and what happens if they caw? Adrian's gaze dropped to the faint bracelet mark on my wrist, then lifted back to my face. Then, he said softly, we build something different, a kingdom where mercy is law, where power serves instead of taking. I felt my eyes burn with tears I didn't want to show, because crying in front of a king felt absurd. But maybe that was the point. Maybe he didn't want me to treat him like a king. Maybe he wanted me to treat him like Adrian. I let out a shaky breath. I have one more condition, I said, trying to steady my voice. He waited, patient. If I'm going to be proof that kindness isn't weakness, I said, then you're going to have to learn how humans survive, starting with this. I reached into my backpack and pulled out my battered notebook, the one filled with dreams I'd kept secret. I held it out. Adrian took it carefully, like it was sacred. What is it? He asked. My life, I said, the part I didn't think mattered. He looked down at the pages, then back at me, eyes shining with a kind of respect that made my chest ache. It matters, he said. Outside the window, thunder rolled again, but the room didn't feel like it was shaking anymore. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the world to drop me. Adrian stepped back toward the door. Sleep, he said, I will stand guard. I frowned. You don't sleep. I can, he said, I don't often. Then tonight, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice, you will. Even kings need rest. A small, real smile touched his face, brief, grateful, almost boyish. Oh, yes, Maya, he said. He turned to leave, then stopped at the doorway, his voice lowered, careful and honest. One day, he said, you may choose to walk away or you may choose to stay. And if you ever choose eternity, it will be because you asked for it, not because you were afraid. My breath caught. Eternity suddenly wasn't a horror story. It was a question, a possibility, a love that would only be real if it stayed free. Adrian closed the door gently behind him. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the moonlight bracelet on my wrist, listening to the fire crackle in the next room, and feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not safety, not certainty, but purpose. And somewhere deep in the house, I heard voices, soft, urgent, like someone had arrived, like news had traveled fast. A final message drifted through the hallway, just loud enough to reach me. Majesty, the driver said, tense. We have a problem. The council has called a gathering. They're demanding you present the human at dawn. My pulse jumped. Dawn, the word itself felt like a threat and a promise at the same time. I stood, hand on my door, realizing the truth all at once. Adrian hadn't saved me from his world. Well, he had brought me into it. And now I would have to choose, not just between fear and courage, but between being a girl life happened to, and being the woman who made life answer back. Because dawn was coming, and in a kingdom of immortal shadows, a broken waitress had just become the one light nobody could ignore.